On today's Toy Spot, we're going to be having a look at the Iron Man 2 3 3/4 inch figures. This is from the movie series, and today we're going to be looking at the Iron Man Mark III. For those who have already seen my Iron Man Mark IV, I picked up the Iron Man Mark IV. I didn't pick up actually this guy right here initially, just because the ones I had seen seemed so sloppy with the way that the paint was applied that I ended up just sticking with the Mark IV. And when I did the review of the Iron Man Mark IV, I commented that I wasn't quite sure the difference really between the Iron Man Mark IV and the Mark III. Sure enough, the day later, I went out, and I don't even remember where I was at the time, but I ended up seeing this guy in the smaller toy section. It was probably, surprisingly, if you could believe it, I think it was at a grocery store. There's a little small toy section, and I ended up finding this guy here, and the paint was really good on him, so I picked him up. And so when I finish this review of the package, I'm going to open this up, and I'll just show you a comparison between the Mark III and the Mark IV. Of course, before we do that, we'll look at the packaging. Packaging's very basic, very overused. It's a picture of Iron Man at the top. Nothing changes there. Down below we got movie series. And on the back, no names or anything for the characters, but we have got like the Mark II, the Mark I, we've got the Mark III, we've got, I guess, a variation of the Mark III, or just a prototype figure, and most notably we've got the Ironmonger. Oh, still disappointed that the Ironmonger I got, the one Ironmonger I've ever seen, was the one I picked up, and as you know, had two of the same hand. That's a shame. But I'm pretty much near the end of wanting to collect these 3 3/4 inch figures. Some people might be saying, alright, now we can get away from reviewing these things. The only figure that really I still want to pick up is the 3 3/4 inch Whiplash. Whether that guy will ever be seen here in Canada, I really don't know. But I have a feeling that one figure will elude me. In the meantime, that's packaging on the Mark III. What we'll do is we'll open this up, and as I mentioned, we'll do a comparison between the Mark IV and the Mark III. So stay tuned, guys. There's much more to come. And let's get the schematic card out of the way first. As you can see, once again, torso, lower legs, and the arms and head. Really not a lot to be said. But I mean, certainly if you have other figures, case in point, let's bring in the War Machine movie series schematic cards. We'll just quickly do this just in case no one has ever seen these. I'm sure everybody has seen these, but the idea is you can take the legs, which you can't quite see because it's not on the white background, but take the torso, and let's take, say, the legs of War Machine. Just like public school, and then we say to ourselves, well, what else do we want to put on there? Well, let's take the upper torso of the Mark III. As you can see, we've got ourselves a little boring, yes, but we've got ourselves an Iron Man with gray legs. And what's neat is for every time you add a different card, you actually change the serialized number, I guess, of the suit, which is kind of neat as well. So there you go, guys. Not really much to be said, I know. I'm sure you guys are already sick of these, but I've said it before, I actually don't mind these cards. I think they're at least something different. The one thing that still drives me crazy, though, is the fact that they've yet to come to their senses and put the names of the suits on the front of the stands. Once again, no name whatsoever. Seems like a no-brainer to me that they could have easily put them in there, but no, they didn't. They decided they didn't want to do that. Alright, so we'll put the stand aside, and show you guys the Mark III. And the Mark III is once again a great figure. I have no problems. Well, I have one problem with the figure, but it's a small problem. And let's say, for the sake of argument, we actually have a look at the comparisons first and foremost. Because I tell you right off the bat, I had no idea what the differences were between the two figures. As you can see, though, I think it is quite clear that one of the main differences is that the Mark IV here has a much slender upper torso. Like they've actually streamlined it. I think you can see here where I guess the robot pecs, if you want to call it that, the robot pecs are actually a separate piece. Well, not a separate piece, but it is a separate sculpt from the lower part of the torso. Whereas if you look at the Iron Man Mark III, it actually is just one big chunk of plastic. It's certainly a lot chunkier than what the Mark IV ended up being. As well, there are some slight differences here. As you can see, the additional sculpting in the arms. This is a much more angular kind of design. As well, the Mark III has the additional elbow. Let me just move the elbow out of the way here. It's got the additional elbow piece, which actually is not found on the Mark IV. Other things to note as well is probably the shoulder pads. You can notice as well as there's a big difference between the two. This is more of just a rectangular shoulder pad, whereas this actually has a little more going on to it, more like a triangular piece. The heads look almost exactly the same. I don't think there's really a lot of difference. It almost seems like the Mark IV is just a little more. The eyes are angled a little bit more, but I think they're just the exact same. Leg-wise, a little more gold going on in the Mark III than that in the Mark IV. But that's really about it. Different cod piece as well. A little smaller on the Mark IV than here on the Mark III. But I guess really at first glance, if you saw either or in the store, you might pick up one thinking it's the other. But I guess really only if you're a die-hard collector would you really want to get both. I mean, I definitely wanted to get both, and I'm glad a viewer pointed out that I could get a Mark III. Mind you, it would just come with the extra accessory, which I'll get into in a second. But there's just a breakdown between the Mark IV and the Mark III. And now we all know, especially this guy right here, because I honestly didn't know the difference between the two. And now we know. And knowing is half the battle. G.I. Joe. So let's move the Mark IV out of the way. As I mentioned, a viewer told me actually that I could get the Mark III, and he did come with this armor torso. In the pictures, actually, they feature, and I'll put them on in a second, but they actually feature on the back card. They feature the Mark III with this armor. And you might be like myself, who, when I saw the back of the picture, I said, oh, well, I really don't want it with the extra armor, I'll pass on the figure. And lo and behold, as you can see on my thumb here, it is actually a separate piece. It is just actually a pliable rubbery plastic. And the idea is you just open it up here, slide it over top of Iron Man, and matter of preference, some may say it's an improvement, some may say it's a piece of crap. I don't personally like it. I just think it adds a lot to the armor. But if you're a kid, you might actually like it. You might think it's kind of neat. One neat thing too is the fact that these open up. The real weird part about it is, though, that they're so soft. It's just this really soft kind of taffy-like plastic that they use on it. That I guess they do it so that it won't break off, but it just seems very flimsy. And then as you open this up, you expose a little bit of the extra armor going on there. And fold these guys back down. Again, not really a fan. I'd be inclined to probably just leave this off. But if you do like this kind of thing, you're in luck, because the Mark III would come with it. So we'll just put that aside as well. And finally, we'll just have a quick once over on the Iron Man Mark III. In the way of his articulation, he does have articulation in the head. And I haven't forgotten about the one thing that's bothering me about this figure. I will certainly get to it. He has the arm articulation. You can bend out back and forth. You can bend at the elbow. You can rotate the forearm. You can rotate the hand. He has the mid-torso articulation, which is actually nice and tight on this figure. It's not loose, which is good. Herein lies the problem I have with the figure. If you've collected enough of these, you know that in some cases the paint is so heavily applied in some of the areas on the figure. And I have that same problem right here, right in the crotch area of the figure. I cannot move these legs whatsoever. I cannot. I can move the thighs, and I can move this ever so slightly, but this other leg just does not want to move. I think there's so much paint that's caked in there that I could probably just keep wiggling it and maybe loosen it up, but I've got a bad feeling if I apply too much pressure, it's going to come right off. So I'm just going to leave it for now. And at least it's in a position that if I just have him standing, it's not going to make the figure look weird anyways. But he does have 2 points of articulation in the knee, as you can see. He can bend the foot, and he can also rotate it ever so slightly. So standard articulation between this Mark III and certainly the other Iron Man figures. As well to note, the Mark III, as you can see, has the right hand closed and the left hand open. And just bringing back in the Mark IV, it is the complete opposite with the Mark IV. Another good way that you can tell the difference between the two. So this figure, it's a little bulkier than the Mark IV, but I still like it. And the fact that it was the original Iron Man costume in the first Iron Man movie, I do think it's worth picking up. It may not necessarily be everyone's cup of tea, and if you already own the Mark IV, you probably don't need to get this guy. But I still like him. I still do like him, and for a diehard collector of these figures, it probably makes sense that you want to pick this guy up as well. The Iron Man Mark III, I'm gonna give a 7 to. I don't really quite remember what I gave the Mark IV. Probably the Mark IV, I would say, is a better figure of the two. But again, if you're a completionist and you want to get both, then finding the Mark III should be something you'd want to do. So there you go, guys. That was a toy spot on the Iron Man 3 3/4 inch figures. This was the movie line, and today we were looking at the Mark III. It's a little bulkier, but it's still a decent figure nonetheless. And I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I'll see you guys next time.